Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show. And one of the things we're doing this year, because there's a new one coming out in October, is we are working our way through the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. We've already done one, we've already done two, we've even done three, which I'd never seen before. So that brings us to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation. Because I guess Star Trek TNG was such a big hit, they thought, oh, we'll use that name instead of just calling it 4.
It just reminds me in the 90s where you just had like those commercials where some kid would like skateboard into the frame and then go like, finally, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre for my generation.
Yeah. I think the most annoying thing about that is that the movie, like, nothing about it feels next generation.
No. In fact, I would say that, like, at this point, these movies are so, like, falling over their own tropes. Like, everything that happens in this is literally, like, what's happened in the other movies.
Well, almost everything. There's at least some stuff at the end that maybe adds a new dimension to things that are going on.
Yeah.
But, so, yeah, do you know what? Full spoilers. I'm not going to faff about with spoiler-free section. Just know that it's terrible, and just listen to us talk about it, because it'll be better than watching the movie. I promise you.
I would say, I'm pretty sure I saw this as a kid. I definitely remember the first half of the movie. I don't really remember the second half too much, but I know I at least saw some of it at some point.
Do you know what's funny? Kind of similar. Like I remember watching it, but I don't remember any of the crazy shit in the towards the end. So
yeah.
I just remember it being kids end up in the woods. There's a lot of stumbling around, and then a lot of Matthew McConaughey being like crazy, and that was basically all I remembered. But it goes places at the end.
I would say, a lot of people, when they think of this, they think of it having a reputation of just being like god awful, and it fully lives up to that reputation.
Do you know the funny thing is that for the first like 10 minutes, like maybe this isn't as bad as I remember it. Like like it was stupid, right? And I actually thought it was laughable just how little setup there was for the characters. Like they're at a dance, prom, homecoming, whatever, and like girlfriend gets angry at asshole boyfriend because he's making out with someone else. He chases her back to his car, and they're arguing in the car as they're driving away. And then Renee Zellweger and her boyfriend in the back seat, who were having sex, getting high, whatever they were doing, just sort of pop up out of nowhere. And then they end up just driving together. They get lost, even though they're in their own town. Like, I don't know how they're suddenly out in the middle of nowhere near where the Texas Chainsaw family live, but they are. And then, things go wrong. And then, by the way, and I loved one of the lines of dialogue here because of how stupid it was. So at one point, the asshole boyfriend, the one who was cheating on the girl, who is a complete asshole, he's constantly talking about Renee Zellweger's boobs. He's being really sexist. He's been really, he's objectifying everyone around him. He's awful. But at one point, he has a line. It's when they're lost. It's like, because they're talking about how they need to turn around. He's like, there's no place to turn round. Do these assholes know how to make roads? That was a line of dialogue. Do these assholes know how to make roads? And I'm like, maybe this isn't as bad as I remember. I mean, it's bad, but maybe this was more entertaining than I remember it being. Unfortunately, once we actually get to the Texas Chainsaw stuff, it basically just becomes really, really boring and repetitive. And
I just want to applaud you on that line reading, because I think you actually did it better than
thank you.
The guy that said it. I thought, like, obviously, like, Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey, they're pretty hammy in this, but it still feels like acting. And then some of the rednecks and stuff weren't too bad, but I thought the other teenage characters were like some of the worst acting we've seen in a real long time. Yeah,
they're pretty awful. I'm going to dispute you on Renee Zellweger. I actually think she's pretty bad. Now, admittedly, this could be the direction rather than her acting choices herself. But I thought some of her reactions to a lot of the crazier shit that was going on felt really weird and out of character, or not out of character, but just unnatural. Like, there was weird moments where she just didn't seem scared enough, where she just wasn't reacting with the dread that was being like thrust upon her. It was weird.
I felt fear, like, in her, but it seemed more like fear of, oh, are people going to see this movie, as opposed to like fear of her character in the scene.
Well,
Like
interesting.
it seemed like there was kind of a laid back like acting to it of like an almost like I don't want to be here kind of vibe.
Interestingly, this is a movie that was like shelved, which is actually funny because the new one that's coming out was also shelved. Like the new Leatherface movie that's coming out this year has actually been finished for a while, and they've just waited to release it for some reason. But this was the same.
That's
with
weird
this.
because that's usually like a good mark of quality on a movie. Right?
Hey, to be fair, Jason X also was shelved, and I happen to quite enjoy Jason X, so I will hear none of it. Absolutely none of it. But
I think the only one that I think breaks that rule, I feel like, is Cabin in the Woods was shelved for a while.
it
I think.
was, yeah, that was shelved for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Interesting you bring that up, but more on that later. But no, the point I was getting at, this was shelved originally, right? Because when did it come out? 94, I think. Yeah, 1994. I think it was
good year. Pulp Fiction, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Shawshank Redemption, of course. Don't leave out the the other one. This was shelved, and it was made before either Renée Zellweger or Matthew McConaughey were famous. And then I think by the time it came out, like they tried to release it post, like at least one of them got famous. And I think, if I remember right, maybe this was just a story or maybe just a rumor, but I feel like one of them tried to stop it from getting released. like they were ashamed of it, and it's kind of funny because watching it, I'm like, yeah, I kind of see why. Because it's not even like it's a good goofy slasher movie; it's just miserable.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm pretty sure no one in this film dies by a chainsaw, and I know that I know the count has been quite low. It's almost a running joke at this point how few people actually die with chainsaws in that series called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But this movie, I don't think has any, which is
I didn't think about it, but I think you're right. Yeah. It's more of a dance partner at this point.
I mean, he really only even holds it in 2 scenes, from what I can remember, which is, again, we're getting. This is so a lot of the movie is them like traipsing around in the forest. For some, the characters are really weird as well. They make really strange choices. They split up for no reason, and it's not like that because as much as that's like often a complaint in horror movies where characters split up, it's usually at least they're in a building and they're like searching the building or something like that. These characters are lost in the woods. They don't know where they are. They don't know where they're going, and for some reason they decide to like split up and just wander the woods themselves. It's odd. And then on top of that, at one place, so after they've crashed the car, right, and they're walking around, and they find this little like office, and we're introduced to what's her name? Darla is the character's name, and she's this kind of weird woman who's constantly making sexual references. She's kind of almost flirting with a teenage boy. Someone throws a brick through the window and she flashes them because, you know, it's giving you this idea. And obviously right away, because it's a Texas Chainsaw movie, I'm thinking, all right, she's part of the family. She's one of the psychopaths. This is where they're going with it. And okay, fine.
That's what, like that's what I was kind of like getting to like earlier. Like it's always the same thing in this movie. You always meet some stranger who seems nice, and then they're gonna come running back to him later because they're the one like familiar nice thing they know, and then surprise they're going to be working with the family or part of the family.
So but here's the thing, right? So at least obviously later on we see that she is part of the family and she doesn't help them. She's actively more of a psychopath. But in this scene itself, she calls someone with a truck to come and help them, to come and pick up their car. And for some reason, after the scene, they all just kind of walk away from the place and don't wait for the truck. It's weird. It's like I think they're supposed to be going back to their car, but they never really get there. And I guess they're just lost again. But I'm like, you just walk from there. You walk down a road. It's not like you were walking through wilderness. You walk down a road. You just go back the way you came. It's not that goddamn hard.
Yeah, it's really strange. I don't know if they had some spiked punch at prom or something. They're not making great choices.
There's also this running thing where the asshole keeps saying that his dad's a doctor, and then later on he says his dad's a lawyer just so that he can prove that he knows what he's talking about certain things. You know, his dad's a doctor because he's got all these opinions where if you don't have sex often enough, this can happen. Oh, my dad's a lawyer, so this is basically kidnapping. I know what I'm talking about. Like he keeps doing that. And then he dies, I guess. Like he gets Leatherface. Leatherface finally appears like 30 something minutes into the movie, and he's just kind of standing behind one of the girls because they find the house, of course. The asshole and her have like split away from Zellweger for some reason, and they're at the house. And here's what I don't get, right? So she's sitting on this little deck chair that's swinging, right? And Leatherface is standing behind her, and then it's okay. I guess it's a fun little sort of creepy moment where he's just sort of standing behind her and he's kind of sniffing her hair and stuff. And then she notices him and she starts screaming. And out the front of the house, or the back of the house, whatever side each of them was on, the boyfriend is like one of the other hillbilly characters, has got a gun on him. And he hears his girlfriend screaming and he's like, oh, I need to go help her. That's my girlfriend. She's screaming. And she's screaming at the top of her lungs like she has been murdered. Like she is screaming for help. She's pleading. Eventually, he gets into the house and locks the door so that the guy with the gun doesn't get through to him, right?
Yeah.
And then he just starts sort of like creeping through the house and he's like, hey, whatever her name was, Heather. Hey, Heather, are you in here? And I'm like, you heard her screaming like she was being murdered. Why are you just nonchalantly kind of like, Heather, are you okay? Are you in here?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem, I don't know. It felt almost like the actor didn't know what the context of the scene was, so he was playing it a completely different way from what it should be played.
It's really hard to, I don't know if we should blame the actor or the director, but yeah, this guy particularly was just awful. Like when he's like, pleading, not even pleading, just like talking with the guy that has the gun on him, like literally the cadence is like, hey, come on, no, let's not do this. I'm gonna go over here now. Like it's like it's so goddamn awful. And yeah, there's no sense of urgency like at any point.
I will admit though, I did give it a laugh when Leatherface grabs Heather and he's like, she's kicking and screaming, he's taking her into the storage room or whatever it is, and he puts her on the freezer and shuts the lid. He goes to walk away and she immediately just kicks open the freezer and starts screaming again, and I thought that was pretty funny. There's not a lot in this movie that I think is supposed to be funny that actually made me laugh, but that did make me laugh. So fair play.
And I might probably talk about it a little bit more later on because I don't think we get a ton of good looks at Leatherface right now, but I thought it
looked like shit even at this point.
Awful, this movie.
The wig's terrible, the mask is terrible, he looks bad.
And I like in the other movies, I thought he was like a nice creepy character because you don't really know exactly like what he kind of looks like or what he's wearing. Like you can tell it's this weird skin mask and wig and stuff, but you're not really sure exactly what he's trying to look like or whatever. But then in this, he just looks like a little old lady. Like he has like a gray
and then
wig.
As the movie goes on, he for some reason this movie decides to have him be a cross-dresser, and he's like wearing women's clothes and he's put lipstick on, and and later on, like when someone sees him, he actually like closes his blouse like he's he's scared that someone's looking at him. And I'm not really sure why this was the direction to go in. It's worth mentioning at this point, by the way, the writer-director of this movie was the co-writer of the original film.
Really?
Yeah, Kim Henkel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which good question. There's a lot of why is a fantastic question with a lot of this movie. And speaking of the stupid characters, right? Just while this is all going on, Zellweger, like actually before that even happens, like Matthew McConaughey, we first see him and he encounters the guy they've left with the car because the other car they hit had someone who was like half dying, he was lying in the ground. Matthew McConaughey basically just comes up and snaps the guy's neck, and then he's like, right, I'm gonna kill you too, and he does, and he's over the top. He's being like, he's this crazy Matthew McConaughey turned to 15. He's being super wacky. But his truck, he eventually pulls up next to Renée Zellweger, and she's like, oh, can I get help, blah blah blah, and he's already hostile, like he's very kind of get in the goddamn truck, do you want help or not? And he's so hostile that he eventually sort of starts to move a little bit while the door's still open to basically say, if you don't get in, I'm going, which scares her into getting into the truck. But even at that point, I'm like, why are you getting in the truck? He's clearly either, if he's not a complete psychopath, he has been so hostile to you up until this point where he's almost like, get in, I can tell you where you're going.
Yeah, there's absolutely no subtlety to like anyone's performance, and yeah, he's not even trying to like I feel like serial killers are not the type of people that just go up to you and be like, I'm gonna kill you, come on, let's go.
Yeah, that's almost what it feels like, and she kind of does it out of fear, and then immediately as soon as she's in the car, he starts a story. He's like, oh yeah, weird, people picking up strangers can be really creepy. There's this old guy who like cut off this girl's arms and just left her to die, and obviously this is making her uncomfortable. And then he immediately says, "Yeah, that's a shame that it's just no imagination." and then he goes proper creepy, and that's it. And he eventually lets her. She kind of runs out the car, and he just kind of like, "Oh, you want to stay here? That's fine." And he lets her get out into the woods because he knows Leatherface is kicking about, which is ultimately who grabs her and brings her back. Well, actually, no, he chases her, which leads to the previous woman. Darla was that her name? Yeah, Darla. And that's where she's pretending to care at first. Like she goes out the little building and she's like, "Come out now, boys!" Like, you know, and she's like being kind of playful, as if she's just been chased by some sort of delinquent that's not actually that dangerous. Yeah. But then eventually the other guys show up and she puts her in the trunk of her car. And she's like, "Okay, I'm going to take her back to the house, but I'm going to go pick up pizza first," which gives us this weird little side tangent.
Drive-through pizza.
Drive-through pizza.
I was like, does such a thing exist?
Do you know what? I never even thought about that during the scene, but you're right. I've never actually seen that.
It's very strange.
But at the same time, it's like, why doesn't it exist?
No,
when you think about it, like,
sense, yeah,
it's no different from getting a cheeseburger. I mean, really. The window has to be wider, but I mean, other than that, it's like it's not that weird. Like, so I guess.
But this scene was like really ridiculous, and also, like, what is going on here? Like, she's so nonchalant to the point where I almost wondered, like, is the whole town in on this?
Well, yeah, because
the way
she's the. Because Zellweger's in the car and she's banging on the hood or whatever to get out, and she goes back and she's like, "Are you going to settle down?" She's like, "I can't breathe." So she's like, "Well, I'll poke a hole. Will you be okay?" She's like, "Yeah." And Zellweger's delivery as she's got the bag in her head almost feels too calm. It's almost like it's been played for slapstick comedy. And then the cops pull up behind her, and the guy cop's like, "Oh, I'm going to go and speak to her," and he tries to be all macho, and she kind of flirts back, and it's all. But he never like asks. Well, he does ask what's in the car, but she just kind of like brushes it off with, "Oh, you don't want to know," with a smile. It's all flirtatious, and it's just kind of. I guess it's supposed to be amusing, the whole thing.
See,
but at least I'll give it this though. At least this scene, I was kind of entertained by the absurdity of it. Once they go back to the house, I was bored shitless for the rest of the
movie. I would say
for most of it anyway.
I would say once you get back to the house, it goes up and down to, oh my god, this is a really crazy scene, to all right, now it's a little boring, and I kind of went up and down a little bit.
Because once they get back to the house, it's basically just Matthew McConaughey being crazy and shouting at her and then shouting at everyone else and occasionally hitting people, and that's kind of it for like 30 minutes. It's really, really dull. And especially since we've done this in every movie. We even have a dinner table scene again. Like,
there's
can we go over this,
so
please?
much stuff. Like, there's all right. So we have the dinner table scene. We have the wheeling out the feeble old grandpa. We have the.
Hey, he stands up in this one. He's not that feeble compared to the old ones.
Which he actually looks younger.
It's like, the next generation, but somehow the grandpa's actually. But I mean, I assume it's not might be the same one, but I mean, hell if I know.
Yeah, and then we have the heroine jumping out the window, which it almost looked like they didn't like. It was a weird shot where like she jumps out the window, but then it kind of looks like she gets caught in it, and then like it kind of like switches like views, and you just see her like gliding over it. Like I looks like, I don't know, two takes spliced together or something.
Well, I mean, it's always two takes spliced together if it's two shots, but I think the point you're making is that the edit doesn't work. Like, there's clearly the continuity doesn't match between the edits. Which, to be fair, when you're learning filmmaking, that's one of the first hard things you have to learn how to do, is make the edits match. Something as simple as someone sitting down in the chair is actually quite hard to edit together right if you don't know how to pace it and so on. Yeah. But anyway, so
this is everything is the same, and and I think a big problem with this too is I never felt like the family was that threatening in a weird way, because like Renee Zellweger at one point, like, she literally just gets up like from the chair, just like walks out, like the family's all fighting with each other.
To be fair, I've got a theory on that. I think that may be intentional.
Okay.
As odd as that sounds, I actually think I've got a theory on that. because of where this goes. This is the thing, right? So much of the movie's in the house with them like being crazy, right? And it goes on too long, and we've seen it all before. We've seen it done better in the other movies, and I don't really need to see the dinner scene again, right? And the thing is, the original movie, in 2, and even 3, spent time like building up our main characters. We spent time with them before stuff went down. This one doesn't, though. This one just, like, they're in that car and they end up crashing, and we're kind of in the plot within like 10 minutes, if that.
Yeah.
There's no time to, I mean, admittedly the acting's not great, so I don't know if I want to spend time with them, but theoretically you should want to do that. But because we get to the main stuff so quickly, it feels like it drags on for so long, and then it's all stuff we've seen before, but just not done as well.
Yeah. And then, I don't know, stuff that maybe is like, oh, that's kind of new, is like really bizarre, like
the leg.
Matthew McConaughey has a robot leg.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
okay.
he's got an electric brace over his leg, which for some reason the TV remote control interferes with, and you can make him twitch his leg by pressing the buttons.
What the?
Which of course is how Zellweger gets out of a clutch moment later on in the film, because she's getting grabbed and whatnot, and the whole thing. And there's a whole scene where she's got a shotgun. She managed to grab a shotgun and points it to the family, and she's like, "I'm going to kill you, all of you, blah 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 blah." And he calls her bluff, and she goes to fire it, and obviously there's no shells in it, or there's one shell, but it wasn't no whatever. But it doesn't work. And all I could think was, don't shoot it if you're, because she brings up that she doesn't know for sure if there's shells in it, and I'm like, well, firing it's only going to make you lose your advantage. If they're not sure either, the one advantage you have is not letting them know. But if you click that trigger and it doesn't, because keep in mind this is an old 2-shooter. There's like 2 shells in it max. There's 4 family members in front of you. The best you can do is kill 2 of them. It is not in your it is only in your interest to make them think that any one of them could die at any minute. If you waste your 2 shots, the other 2 know that you're now vulnerable. Not that she was playing with a full deck the rest of the movie anyway, but yeah. But like I say, throughout all this weird house section, I felt like she kept acting, and like sometimes she was scared, but sometimes she was kind of just, I don't know, like just not acting as terrified as she should have. And that's not to say that she had to be shrieking all the time, like in the first movie with Sally, but it didn't feel like it was a natural reaction to things going on around her.
Yeah, it seemed like there was a weird confusion, but again, it feels more like confusion on the actor. Like, why am I in this movie? Why? What does this person want me to do? As opposed to like the character.
So there's not a lot of kills at this point. Like, the other girl gets set on fire at the dinner scene, and that's about it. So I think
this was another like weird edit too. Between, it looks like she gets set on fire, then it looks like there's a quick scene after that where like she's not on fire,
quick shot,
on fire again. Yeah, shot. Yeah.
No, I noticed that as well. So let's talk about the juicy stuff then. The one interesting thing that we've got to talk about. Now, there's these weird hints throughout the movie where what's her name, Darla, keeps talking about how Matthew McConaughey's character is doing a job. That he's got a job that he does, and this is like, it's stressful for him. And you sort of write it off as first as just crazy talk, and then later on she's talking to her, and she's talking to Zellweger, and she's like, yes, he works for these people. It's like a secret organization who are responsible for the assassination of Kennedy, and all this stuff. And you're like, it just sounds wacky. And you're like, what? So during the dinner scene, the doorbell goes, and McConaughey goes to answer, and there's a guy in a suit who's got out of a limo. And you're like, what's happening? And this guy in a suit comes in, and like McConaughey is scared enough of him that he stopped acting crazy. He's kind of like, he's standing there silence. He's not respectful, but he's certainly not mouthing off like he normally does. And the guy comes in, and his name's Rothman, Mr. Rothman. And he comes in, and he picks up Zellweger, and he sits on the chair. Oh, it'll be okay. Things are going to change. It'll be okay. And then he turns around and he chastises McConaughey. He's like, "This is an abomination. You're here for one purpose. Do you understand what that purpose is? It's to show the world what true horror is." So you're saying that we got the Illuminati, like, organizing serial killers to for some reason, like conspiracy things and whatnot, which is crazy in and of itself, right? Because it's like this weird wacky element that just gets added in, like, and it feels so out of place with everything else in the series. Like, nothing before now has remotely hinted that there's anything else going on other than there's just been a crazy family.
I I watched this like real late last night, and I swear to God, I almost forgot that this even happened before you started bringing it up. I like as soon as you started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, I completely forgot. There's like a weird businessman with like strange, looked like satanic symbols and piercings on his flesh.
Yeah, he opens his shirt and it's almost like three little like door handles, like sort of on his stomach. It was weird, and it's like, okay, what are you doing, movie? You're implying that someone's controlling this family, that it's not just these crazy people. Because one of my complaints up until this point in the movie was like the opening text, which by the way the voice was shit, like compared to like the other voices who did the opening narration. And like, oh, in 1973 there was blah blah blah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then there was a couple of smaller but seemingly related incidents later, which is 2 and 3. And it's like, and then 5 more years of silence. And it's like, okay, so you're implying that they're coming back after like 5 years of not doing anything. But when you actually like see the family operate, you see like McConaughey, the other brother character, like they don't feel like they've been dormant for 5 years. This feels like they act like this every day, and they have done it for their entire lives. But I suppose if it's secret society like regulated, and they're the ones saying, okay, it's time to do this again, maybe that's why they're doing it. I don't know. But she ends up using this as an opportunity. Like the businessman leaves, and then she like runs out. She uses the remote control on his leg and all the rest of it. Gets to run off. Leatherface goes chasing after her, and with a chainsaw and whatnot. And we get this. She runs into an RV. This old couple try and help her. Leatherface is on the back of the truck that they're driving next to it. They actually flip the RV. Big action scene.
Strange amount of time like given to these like RV people. It is very weird. I forget what their names were, but there was like they had like little introductory scenes where like, "Why, hello, Mr. like blah blah blah." Like, "Oh, hello, Mrs. Blah blah." And they're enjoying drinks, and then they're like, "Oh, look, there's a woman running in front of us." I say, like, "Oh, it looks like she's running from a monster." It's like, what is going on?
So then things get really weird though. So Zellweger gets out the tipped over RV and starts running, and Leatherface is just chasing after her, waving his chainsaw around, as is Matthew McConaughey, and there's this plane flying around. this plane. It's not full size. It almost looks like a model, but it's like bigger than a regular. I'd say it's about half size, but about half scale.
It looks like a crop duster. I think they're called.
Yeah, but it looks smaller than like an actual crop duster.
Yeah.
It looked like it was, say, I don't know, like 5 feet wide, give or take.
Yeah.
It didn't look like it was a pilot. It looked like it was remote controlled.
I didn't really. I guess it could be. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention.
You're not going to, but go back and look at it again, and just I'm pretty sure there's no pilot. It's like a remote controlled, kind of like 5 foot wide, roughly sized thing. Like it wasn't a full size plane.
That would definitely make a lot more sense, because what it's doing, I have no idea.
Would it make more sense?
Well, I think if it was some type of like drone on some type of like automatic setting to fly this certain loop, as opposed to if someone was flying it.
Not automatic. I did some digging. I wanted to know more about this. Apparently, this was intentional. The implication is that Mr. Rothman's people are the ones controlling this plane. They intentionally aim for Matthew McConaughey and kill him with this plane. There's not a lot of actual context in the movie. It's really, but then Leatherface is chasing.
That makes a lot of sense, because what's the easiest way to take out someone?
Hit them with a plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Leatherface is still chasing her, but then the limo is behind her. Like a little, horn beeps. Chauffeur gets out and it says, "Here you go, get in the limo." And she does get in the limo. Can I just remind you that we're at the end of a Texas Chainsaw movie? A limousine has shown up after a plane has hit someone, and the final girl has got into the limousine. And Leatherface, as soon as he sees the limo, stops chasing her. He holds back. Okay, so Leatherface also knows what's going on. Fine. And we're in the limo, and it's Mr. Rothman. And she's scared at first. He's like, you've got nothing to be scared of. I just want you to know this was an abomination. This was supposed to be a spiritual experience, and this was a real horrific experience you've went through. And basically offers her, like, do you want to go to the police station or do you want to go to the hospital? Where do you want to go? And we cut to her in the hospital, or actually the police station. Actually, I wasn't sure, because there was someone in a gurney, but at the same time it was a cop. So I guess it was the hospital, but there was a policeman there interviewing her. And we have this weird cameo from Sally from the first movie, who's on the gurney going past, and according to the internet, it was also Franklin who was pushing her. Well, not the character, but the actor who played Franklin was the one pushing the gurney. I
didn't realize that was her. I knew it was supposed to be someone we recognized, but I was like, I don't get this.
she looked familiar, so I double checked because I thought that was who it was, and sure enough it was.
I meant to do more research on this movie because there's so many questions, but I think I finished it last night around like 3 a.m.
The last 20 minutes just go insane. It's weird, and it basically, that's the end of the movie. It cuts back to Leatherface, and he's dancing around with his chainsaw. Even though this is the weird thing, is it just me, or did Leatherface feel like a side character in this one? Like, he wasn't the main focus at all. Matthew McConaughey was by far the lead villain.
Yeah, I mean, I think Leatherface always kind of gets pointed out as the main character in these movies, but as we're going back and watching them, they are definitely more ensemble pieces, but Leatherface is usually pivotal in that, and in this, he did feel sidelined.
Yeah, it felt like he was just weird and just he was just sitting there cross-dressed to the side for most of the movie.
Yeah, I would say he's probably, first place would be like Matthew McConaughey, second place would probably be Darla, and then he would be like the third.
Yeah.
Most important person in the family.
Yeah, he's kind of overlooked, and so here's the weird things, right? The weird theories, because there's all these weird things that happen at the end of the movie. So it's funny you brought up Cabin in the Woods, because I actually think, in a weird way, this was trying to do a Cabin in the Woods-esque thing. I think it was suggesting, so Mr. Rothman says, right, that they're behind this and they want to show the world true horror. It's almost like they've arranged this and they want them to terrorize people. And you kept saying it's almost like they don't want to kill Renee Zellweger. I think that's intentional. I think they want someone to survive, because I think what they want to do is they want to, like, study the effects of this experience after the fact. So they need a survivor. I think the point of it is that she does survive.
Oh,
because I think that's what the ending's hinting. The ending with the, like, Sally from the first movie, I think that's hinting that they've all been that, and that Sally is, like, still, like, medically screwed up because of what she went through.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what the point is.
I mean, that could definitely be something that's pretty interesting. Of course, I feel like there's no really cause for that in this movie, but
I think it would be interesting in another movie where that was, like, the point that they set up, but, like, you're retconning the original Texas Chainsaw, which feels like a random, like, hillbilly, crazy, psychotic family, and you're trying to tell me that those were not government, but secret society issued under orders to do what they were doing. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't.
I think I would have at least been more interested if they did something like that in this movie, because at least it would have been, I'm sure it would have been batshit crazy, but at least it would have been something different.
It reminds me a little bit of like Halloween 6, and how like they tried to give all these reasons for the way Michael Myers was the way he was, and it was like no, it was better when it was just random and he was just the way he was because he was just evil. But you add in all this cult shit and this, like, satanic stuff, and it's like, nah. It kind of feels like this is this franchise's version of that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's no wonder that the next movie's a remake. Like, they decide, no, we don't want to continue that path of, like, going down this weird secret society that's controlling, like, Leatherface and everything else that's going on.
Yeah. I would actually love if they put out, like, a special edition of this movie that had, like, commentary and making of, like, special features that really dive into what this is supposed to be about, what the hell they were thinking, like, because it's certainly bad, but I find it a fascinating type of bad.
Oh yeah, I like the ending is interesting to talk about because it's so batshit insane. Like, you're like, what? It's what? Like, you're trying to tell me that these are controlled by like a guy in a business suit?
Yeah.
Like, it's wacky. Unfortunately, even with that interest stuff, the rest of the movie is a boring turd. Like, there's just no way around it.
Yeah.
You know, characters don't act the way they should. They act really stupid. Any of the suspense or horror is not fun to watch. It's not suspenseful. There's a couple of funny moments because of the bad dialogue, but that's about it.
I'd say like this to me, I think is, I think it has potential to be like a fun bad movie you watch with friends if maybe, you know, once it kind of gets to the middle-ish part, like, you know, if you watch the beginning, kind of, you know, pay attention, make fun of it, and then maybe, you know, during the middle part, kind of, you know, that's when you start to lose interest a bit, and yeah, just kind of talk, get snacks and whatever, and then come back for the end.
Can I just point out, Tim, your recommendation for this is based on the idea that you want a movie that you can zone out and ignore it for like the middle third. That's a really specific recommendation to be making to someone.
I'm just saying it's I think this is a fun bad movie, but you know, if you do start to lose interest, you know, don't feel bad, but make sure to come back for the end.
Sure. So it's a weird recommendation, but yeah, sure. Give it by all means, whatever. I appreciate how crazy the ending is because it's like, okay, right, the director was on LSD or something when he was writing the script. He wanted to throw in something wacky. And if he is trying to say something, if he's trying to make some sort of meta commentary on like how there's always a final girl who always gets away, and like, because to be fair, in the other Texas Chainsaw movies, like there is always that final girl who, like in the first movie, Sally's kept alive for a long time, and there it kind of makes some more sense because it feels like they are kind of terrorizing her, but it's almost like this weird meta commentary looking back at the series and saying, well, why is there always someone who they keep alive for a long time that eventually gets away? Like, I guess it's trying to like poke fun at it and say this is why, because that's what they've been told to do, but it's just kind of.
You know what maybe might have been interesting is if they did kind of want to go that, you know, route and explore it, maybe just like open, you know, with the last, you know, like 15-20 minutes where it actually starts with the girl already captured in the house trying to escape the people, and that's kind of like your cold open, and then you go in there from, you know, why did this happen and who are these people orchestrating it. I'm not saying that would be like a good movie, but that'd probably be a better, you know, way of tackling something like that.
Yeah, probably. Instead, the first hour of it is just a rehash of the same sort of scenes we've seen before, but done, you know, in a much inferior way. So, it sucks.
I do want to talk a little bit more about Matthew McConaughey because he is just
go for it.
So crazy. It actually made me a little sad that we didn't get a like Nicolas Cage-esque career out of him, because like he's definitely kind of a, you know, a jokey actor that people can point to and make fun of, but I always thought it was more of in a laid back kind of way. But he's pulling out some like serious Nick Cage, like, you know, portrays in this movie, where to the point where I was like, wow, like I would have liked to have seen like a more crazier McConaughey and stuff.
I mean, hey, he was doing romantic comedies for like a decade or so, and then he started doing like some serious, you know, True Detective, and like,
he actually is a good actor, and actually I would say Nicolas Cage can be a good actor as well when he wants to be.
It can be. Nicolas Cage occasionally puts out a great performance, and then there's a lot of weird, stupid shit in between it. It's just,
that episode of Community is so good.
Nicolas Cage, good or bad? Good or bad?
And then I also thought that, you know, I thought it was a joke with the whole like, oh, Matthew McConaughey says, all right, all right, all right. Like, I thought that was just like one of those things where people say that, but he doesn't really say that in movies. Maybe he said it once or something, but he did actually say it in this movie. Like, he didn't say it in the usual cadence with people say it, but there was a scene where he was going like, all right, all right, all right. I was like, oh, what? He said it.
Isn't it from one of his earlier movies though? Like,
I have no idea. It's just, I know it's just a thing people, you know, equate with him now. I don't know where it originated from.
I assumed it came from one of his earlier. Like, I've never seen Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which I think that's the one he's in. Is that the one he's in? Or am I confusing it with another teen movie?
Dazed and Confused, maybe.
Dazed and Confused. I think that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Dazed and Confused. As I think, I think I've not seen that, but I just always assumed it came from either that or something from around that time, because I think that was his first sort of big meaty role.
I mean, like regardless where it came from, though, I thought it was always one of those things where it's like, you know, he said it once and people act like he does it all the time, but then I was surprised, like, oh no, he said it in this movie.
All right.
And just, I don't know, I can't overstate it enough. He has a robot leg. What the hell?
Again, it's a brace around the human leg, not a robot leg. There's a difference.
I don't care. Not to me, there isn't.
He's not a cyborg, all right. It's funny though, because I don't think I know. I think I noticed because he's got like a weird belt on. It's got there's like a hose that's coming from the back of his belt down to the leg, and I noticed that at some point, like just from like a waist shot. I didn't see like where the leg was, and I was like, where's the hose going? Why is there a hose at the back of his leg? And then eventually it was like, oh, it's connected to this weird robot leg that he's walking around with. It was odd. And I felt like I missed something, because I was like, I mean, did they make a point of introducing that in his first scene? Maybe I wasn't paying attention during his introduction as much, because presumably you'd point that out, like the camera would go down to it and be like, hey, he's got a weird robot shell of a leg thing going on here. What's happening?
There's a deleted scene where Bane breaks his back and he has to get that.
What? Why would he have a leg brace if his back got broke?
I don't know. What was the? It's been a while since I've seen the Nolan movies. It was Dark Knight Rises had the Bruce Wayne with the robot leg, right?
It wasn't a robot. It was a brace. He had a brace on before, and it was before that happened. It was before the back breaking. His knee was just already done from being old and kicking a lot of things.
Yeah, well, that must have been it then. Basically, Matthew McConaughey is Bruce Wayne, is what I'm saying.
Nah, he's too sullen. He's too. he's more the. I see him in the kind of open shirt with the hat on, out in the porch drinking whiskey. That's what I see Matthew McConaughey doing at the weekend.
Sure. Makes sense.
You know, it always looks a little bit sweaty.
I can see that.
Whereas Bruce Wayne's like sitting in a dark cave on his own.
Brooding.
Yeah, brooding. He broods. He's Bridman. If a Batman doesn't work out, he can change his name to Bridman. That's the thing. All right, I think we have scraped the barrel on this one, Tim. Since we're going into weird tangents now, so I guess I will ask what you would rate the film out of 10.
So it's pretty bad. I think originally I was going more in the 2-ish range, but I'm actually going to bump it up to a 3 just because it is so crazy and wacky. I did get enjoyment out of it as a bad movie. It's not a good movie. I think, you know, if you do like bad movies, it's not the best, as you know, it's not level of like Room or Troll 2 or something, you know, like those ones. But I think there can be some enjoyment to be had from it.
No, I'm going to be harsher. I'm going to go with a 2, and I think it would probably be a 1 if the ending wasn't so crazy that it actually got interesting all of a sudden. Like I was like, wait, what's happening? It's not good, the ending, admittedly, but it's at least like, wait, what are they doing? Really?
Yeah.
What's happening? So at least that fascination and a couple of funny lines early on, I'll give them that. So that, I guess I'm a 2 out of 10. But it is poorly made. It's not scary. It's not suspenseful. It's not intentionally funny for the most part. Maybe that bit with the freezer was supposed to be funny, in which case, fair enough. You know, I'll give you that. But the rest of it, like, nah. Leatherface looks like shit, and that's when he's got his normal look before he starts, you know, cross-dressing and stuff. McConaughey is overacting, which should be entertaining, but honestly it got really old because he never, there was no ups and downs. He just kept crazy the entire time. It just kind of got old.
Yeah, I think I liked him early on, and then again, getting to that middle-ish area when they're in the house, that's when it did start to wear a little thin.
Yeah, once they're in the house, I was just bored until Businessman showed up. Like, I really was bored out of my mind for that, like, 25, 30 minutes, whatever it was, but it dragged like a bitch. So, yeah, 2 out of 10 for me. So, clearly it's the weakest of this franchise so far by quite a margin. I will be impressed if it's topped by any of the forthcoming ones that we get to, but we shall find out. That means next time we do a Texas Chainsaw movie, it'll be the remake, so that'll be a jump 9 years into the future, into the futuristic land of 2003, but you can come back in a few weeks or whenever we get to that. I'm not sure when it's scheduled, but it's coming up soon. So with that said, I guess that's us. So let us know what you think of Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mail_fudge for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv. You can do that over there. There's some perks and stuff. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.